the Animal Welfare Committee to order. And I am joined by my colleagues, Mr. Fuentes and Mr. O'Farrell. And we will start with item number 1.
Item number 1, communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Ms. Jennifer Brent to the Board of Animal Services for the term ending June 30th, 2017.
So, would you like to step up and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello. My name is Jennifer Brent, and I'm the Executive Director of the Jason Debus Heigl Foundation. I want to thank the Pause Committee so much for considering my appointment to the Commission. I'm honored and humbled at this opportunity to serve the people of Los Angeles. I've been working with animals as a volunteer for the last 19 years at open admission municipal animal shelters and working full-time with animal welfare for the last 6 years. Before being with the Heigl Foundation, I was with the Found Animals Foundation, which is Dr. Gary Michelson's privately funded operating foundation. In those capacities, I've worked with Los Angeles City as well as Los Angeles County and other municipal shelters here in Los Angeles, and I am just absolutely excited to become an advocate on behalf of the voiceless and to work for the betterment of the residents of Los Angeles. I hope that my experience and passion and drive can work to inform my decision-making when on the Commission, and I very much appreciate this opportunity.
And what direction do you see the Commission going in?
I think that the Commission has a very serious and valuable opportunity to review not just the workings of the Animal Services Board and animal services that provide oversight for the companion animals of Los Angeles, but also the farm animals and wild animals that exist within our borders. And I'm looking forward to doing everything that I can to protect those animals and work for their protection.
Okay. Colleagues, any questions?
Real quickly, if I may. I'm so glad to hear you talk about wildlife and other domesticated animals. That's very important. And Los Angeles has such a vast urban wildlife community as well, and we don't hear enough about that. So thank you for mentioning that, and thanks for stepping up and volunteering to help the animals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Fuentes, any questions?
I'd move the nomination.
Well, certainly would second that. And there is one speaker from the public whose name I will have struggled to pronounce the last name. Deborah Cron? Oh, okay. Sorry, it's hard to read, but it is. Sorry.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Deborah Kanan, and I am here to speak on behalf of Ms. Brent's appointment to the Commission. As a former city commissioner myself on the same commission, and also having worked for the Department of Animal Services for a brief period as the Assistant General Manager of Operations, I'm very familiar with the responsibilities of the commissioner for this particular commission, and I also am very familiar with the traits that are really necessary to serve on commissions in general and this commission in particular. And I believe that Ms. Brent, who I've known for a number of years now, would be an outstanding, ideal commissioner. Aside from the fact that she's extremely bright and has a phenomenal work ethic, she's also very, very interested in this particular subject and passionate about it, but I think the most important thing is that she's very level-headed and thinks with her head as opposed to her heart, which is necessary to be a commissioner. And I feel that I know for a fact that she's extremely reasonable. And for all those reasons, I would highly recommend her as a commissioner, and think she'd be outstanding. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. So congratulations. I hope. Item number 2.
Item number 2, communication from the Mayor and City Ethics Commission report relative to the appointment of Mr. Roger Wolfson to the Board of Animal Services for the term ending June 30th, 2016.
Welcome. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself as well.
My name is Roger Wolfson. I'm a television writer and also a civil rights attorney. I have a background in politics. Before moving to Los Angeles, I served as counsel to Senator Joseph Lieberman and speechwriter and counsel to Senator John Kerry, and joint staff to both Paul Wellstone and Ted Kennedy as chief education counsel to the Senate Labor Committee. I then came to Los Angeles and became a writer. And now I'm a homeowner. I live in Silver Lake in Mitchell Farrell's district, quite proudly so. And I'm engaged to Naran El-Shinawi, who also lives in the district. And we are the proud owners adopted parents of 2 rescue dogs, who I quite confidently say turned our relationship into a family.
Why this commission in particular? So you obviously have a strong legislative background and otherwise, but no professional involvement with this issue.
Well, I think that I've always wanted to serve. It's always been a fundamental part of my life. I am particularly attracted to a lot of the new energy in the city of Los Angeles towards making Los Angeles a more compassionate community. I think that from my own personal experience, that begins with how we treat each other, how we treat the weakest among us, which are our animal population. And I really feel as though I can be of great service by contributing toward the commission being responsive to the public, by contributing towards the commission being constructive and creative and really furthering the goals that it was designed to further.
Questions, colleagues?
Mr. Chair, I'll just commend Roger as well. In addition to Ms. Brent, another really great appointment by the mayor, and thank you for stepping up. I've gotten to know Roger over the past year, and in addition to being a great constituent, just a great all-around human being, and I think you'll be a wonderful addition to this committee, so thanks for stepping up.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Fuentes, any questions?
Move the nominee.
Okay, and we have a couple of speakers from the public. First, Skip Haynes from CLAW, Citizens for Los Angeles Wildlife. Please.
We are Citizens for Los Angeles Wildlife. We're a nonprofit for public benefit organization that basically champions wildlife habitats, and wildlife corridors. And my primary speaking is to animal services, because in the 470 square miles of the city of Los Angeles, we have at best, I believe, 2 officers dedicated to wildlife. That means any poisoned, orphaned, car-hit wildlife has about 2 officers, and it's understaffed. And CLAW likes to work with agencies, and particularly we would like to work with Animal Services to put in a wildlife rehabilitation center for the city. Right now, there's nothing in the city of Los Angeles where you can take wildlife. You have to go to Calabasas or Ventura or to San Pedro. And with the small amount of wildlife officers, to drive an hour and a half for injured wildlife, we don't think it's acceptable. So we just wanted to talk to the commissioners and let them know that we work with other agencies, and we will be happy to take on any of the burden to help start this process. So that's basically it. And after the commissioners leave, we have little packets for them to explain what we're doing. But basically, we're just here to introduce ourselves to the commission and let you know anything that we can do to help, we will do. Thank you.
Thank you. I know Allison, but I cannot pronounce her. Samard. Okay. Allison Samard.
Allison Samard, also from Citizens for Los Angeles Wildlife. And, this is a wonderful opportunity for the new members who are going to be working for Animal Services. Our wildlife are in crisis in our hillsides, in our water areas, and, the wildlife are really the mercury in our thermometer. how the city grows, how the city makes its considerations based upon the long-standing protections of wildlife have to do with preserving our environmental heritage. And so we are really encouraged to hear wildlife brought along in the comments today that go along with domestic animals as well, and working continuously with this committee, which is oversees that. So thank you very much. We look forward to working with you all.
Thank you so much. And the nomination has been moved. All in favor? Aye. And it passes unanimously. So congratulations and good luck in this position, hopefully once you are approved by the City Council.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item number 3.
Item number 3, LAPD, Los Angeles Police Commission report in response to motion of feral occurrence relative to the status of the Animal Cruelty Task Force.
We could have some representatives come up and make a presentation.
Good afternoon. My name is Captain Kelly Moldor from the Commanding Officer, Detective Support and Vice Division, and this with me is Senior Detective Hector Sanchez. He runs the Animal Cruelty Task Force within my command. You all have a copy of the report. I'll just highlight a couple of things from the report that we submitted. Just to give you a little bit of background, the Animal Cruelty Task Force was put together back in February of 2005 based on a council motion at that time. And then in March, we entered into a memorandum of agreement with the LAPD and the Department of Animal Services to establish the unit within the Los Angeles Police Department. In 2010, it was moved over into Detective Support and Vice Division. And currently it's comprised of 4 LAPD detectives, 1 police officer, and 1 animal control officer. The focus of ACTF is to certainly prioritize animal abuse cases that significantly threaten public safety. In doing that, we do a lot of work with recognizing that a lot of people who engage in acts of animal cruelty, it crosses over into issues of domestic violence, child abuse, and a lot of mental illness. So we do work closely with the Department of Children and Family Services and the Mental Evaluation Unit, which is also within my command. The Department of Animal Services, they continue to perform a really vital role within the unit, certainly with their expertise in animal humane law and with the forensic medical examinations that they provide for us and the completed medical reports. In the last couple of years, we've handled over 100 after-hour calls. That's where Detective Sanchez and his unit are called out off hours to respond to calls in the field that officers come across. And in this year alone, we've received over 1,400 calls from the public directly to the Animal Cruelty Task Force regarding cases. Some of the things that the Animal Cruelty Task Force is responsible for handling are aggravated animal abuse cases resulting in serious injury or death to the animal, severe animal neglect if it crosses a threshold into a felony, dog fighting and cockfighting, which we refer to as blood sports, bestiality, animal poisoning, and animal sacrifice or mutilation. Some of our significant statistics for the year, the report that you have ended in November of 2013, but the updated numbers for the total number of cases handled in 2013 went up, from 125, it is now at 133 at the end of the year. So it's an additional 8 cases compared to what you have in your report. You may notice that since 2011, it showed that we had 241 cases, and it has decreased over the years. The reason for that is that we have changed the focus, and we've really drilled it down on the types of cases that the task force will handle. We go for, like I said earlier, we only handle the most egregious cases, ones that threaten public safety. And that's not to say that other cases that we come in that we don't handle aren't handled. They are handled. They're just handled by Department of Animal Services. So we've kind of refined our criteria for handling certain types of cases so that we can focus the very limited resources that we have on those cases. And then total number of arrests for the year is 50. It's up from 40. We have one additional arrest since we submitted this report. I think one of the interesting things that we did include in the report a variety of significant cases, some that were domestic violence related, mental health related, and family violence and sexual deviant behavior. And in those cases, we have had some success in having the offenders, if they're convicted, also have to register as sex offenders. And that is our report.
Mr. O'Farrell, you are the author of the motion, so I'll let you start with some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank you for coming in. I think this might be the first report you've given in a while, or maybe ever, to this committee, and I think I would love to see you come in yearly and do this. I just know that while on staff of my predecessor, when the Animal Cruelty Task Force was formed, I used it on a regular basis, utilized the services, and as you can see by this report, it is such an essential tool in fighting animal cruelty and abuse cases. And I am glad that you reported on this so that it highlights your existence, because I think a lot of people are still unaware that the task force exists, that you all do incredible work day in and day out while no one is looking, and we need to daylight that. I think that each arrest that you've made, that each case that you have worked represents a saved animal or 2 or 10 or 20 or 30 and makes for a more humane Los Angeles. The work you do is very, very important. I just have a few questions. And do you all also deal with any of the Santee Alley cases, or is that pretty much animal services?
Largely animal services, but I'll let Hector.
Yeah, the issue of the Santee Alley, comes up repeatedly throughout the years, and it's always an issue with the animal cells. Unfortunately, as a task force, we're limited as what we could do. But what we can do, we'll do. For instance, we set up a working group that meets with stakeholders, that comes in, at the beginning, the group was meeting, every couple of weeks, then monthly. We're going to start meeting quarterly, and that is to identify best practices and what is working and what is not to combat the sale of animals. Now, what we've done as a task force, we have identified what those best practices are, and we're kind of like a clearinghouse. We share information with the Department of Animal Services, with the City Attorney's Office, with the bids that the security agencies that work downtown to try to combat that issue. It's my understanding since our working group was formed that the DAS has conducted a periodic high visibility patrol, which has really helped out the area. We've seen a lot of the vendors kind of just leave and not come back, but it's going to take some work. Unfortunately, Santee Alley, the illegal animal cells, have been around for decades. I mean, ever since I can remember, it's been there, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. But what is helping now is that we are talking to other departments, and we are making it work. So in that sense, and that's how we're involved with the animal cells.
It sounds like that system, and if it's consistent and lasts, that you're certainly chipping away at the problem. Yeah, I'm aware that it's decades old. And let me ask you this: in terms of staffing, have you submitted a budget request within your department to request the same amount of staffing, more staffing? Where are you with that, and how do you feel about that? Despite the obvious answer is we could always use more staff. But
well, I would say that I have not asked for an increase in staffing because it's kind of an exercise in futility at this point. We are making we're operating as clean as lean as we can. We are currently carrying one vacancy, detective vacancy, and we're doing outreach at this time to fill that position. And I'm going to be allowed to fill the position. But in terms of growing the unit, I have not even asked.
Okay. And lastly, does the task force have a list of what qualifies as cruel to animals? Just a short list. For example, a dog chained to a fence all day long, 24/7. Just a list of things to circulate, because part of it's educational as well. I think it would be helpful just to circulate that kind of information to the council offices, to the neighborhood councils, to the improvement associations, and just keep continually educating the public, working with animal services on just what constitutes cruel behavior to our animal population.
In terms of a list, we don't have a list that tells us, if you see this, you got that. I know with law enforcement, we have a lot of cheat sheets, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have an exemplar, you could do practically any report imaginable. Animal cruelty is a whole different area. It's very subjective. It will be impossible to have such a list. For the most part, though, when we take on a case, it deals, well, primarily we take it on with the severity of the crime itself, especially if it's tied to human violence. For instance, domestic violence, child abuse, bestiality, any of the things that would, cause you to think, oh, this is serious, we're going to do it. But a lot of it also has to do with the injury of the animal. That's what really we base whether or not we're going to take on a case. And it is subjective at the end of the day, but we've managed to have the expertise now where we could look at a case and say, yes, this is going to be a felony, this is something that we're going to take on. Or we take on cases because of the investigative expertise that it's going to be required to get a filing on those cases.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, I'd be interested in following up on that specific example. I know when I was in the legislature, we actually made it illegal to chain a dog for an extended period of time. And there were some very egregious cases. Would that ever qualify as meeting this level of cruelty?
Well,
It is subjective, but I'm just trying to get a sense of where you draw the line.
Well, where we draw the line is this. If there's licensing issues, any licensing issue would be referred to the Department of Animal Services for appropriate action. We have an understanding with the task force in that if it rises to the level where we need to get involved, we're contacted, and we get contacted quite a bit, and we bounce things off one another. Some of the lieutenants from the shelters, they reach out to us quite a bit, and they say, hey, what do you think about this? And it's a collaborative effort on taking on these cases. So as a task force, even though we determine what we're going to take on, we don't shut the door to anybody. We'll listen to what they have, and we'll see what type of case. We evaluate the case on a case-by-case basis. But a lot of the issues, like, for instance, tethering and so forth, those are shelter issues that are referred to the shelter.
Okay, and obviously what was just asked by Mr. O'Farrell about how well people know about this task force. Is there training given to first responders, LAPD, animal services, so that everybody is actually aware that this exists?
Yes, we do a lot of training, in-service training, and the Animal Cruelty Task Force frequently will go to roll calls. The Communications Division is aware of our existence, and so if they get a call that involves some type of animal abuse or cruelty, they know to call us. Oftentimes it'll be in the comments of the call to contact us. Racer Division, off hours, knows to call us, so the officers will call Racer, they tell them what they have, and then they refer the calls to Hector and his folks. We do a great deal of training, not only within LAPD, but also community outreach and other agencies.
In addition to that, we teach Vice School, which is put on at least 6 times a year, depending on whether or not we could get these classes filled. So during Vice School, we're outreaching to first responders. Maybe there was 30 to 40 per class, so we do that 6 times a year. where we actually have a lesson plan where we teach them about animal cruelty.
Very good. And I don't know how familiar you are with the proposed administrative citation program, but it's a way to bridge the gap between, in many cases, doing nothing and then having to prosecute it as a misdemeanor. So it's an administrative fine program, and it's going to start with LAPD cases and animal services cases. So do you know if anyone with the task force has looked at incorporating ACE into the process?
I'm really familiar with that program. However, the emphasis of the task force is to focus on violent crime, violent individuals, and the most egregious cases of animal cruelty. I mean, some of the folks that we're dealing with, I don't think that would apply to, unfortunately.
So would we be looking at misdemeanor prosecutions in most of the cases that the task force takes up?
Well, in terms of most of the cases that the task force takes on, we take on all felony arrest. We also take on misdemeanor cases as well. But where I could see that probably working would be maybe like in some of the cockfighting cases. But like I said, in terms of applying it in other things, maybe like tethering or so forth, that will kind of deviate from our mission.
So you think most of that would probably apply to animal services enforcement,
Yes.
it sounds like.
Mr. Chair, if I may, you bring up a great point. Of the total of arrests, are they 100% felony arrests, or what's the lead to felony charges or misdemeanor charges? What's the mix?
Well, the majority of the arrest, almost 100% of the arrest are felony arrests.
Okay, I just wanted to. I thought as much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good to know. Okay. I wonder if you could describe an example of some of the more significant cases that have gone to the task force. I wonder if you could give me a couple examples of the most extreme or significant.
Now the cases that were in the report, they're just kind of snapshots of other cases. What we try to do in this report is we try to break them up between some of the areas like domestic violence related, family violence related, mental illness related, juvenile abuse related, sexual deviant behavior, and other, animal abuse related crimes. Most recent, I'll start with a pretty recent one. This was a domestic violence case. And it's interesting because, I've worked domestic violence before. I've also been a sexual assault investigator. And one of the things that strikes me very unique about animal cruelty is the fact that, folks are just so passionate about animals. And there's a place for domestic violence, but if you work domestic violence long enough, you know that you need other tools in your arsenal. And this case, kind of highlights the point where you have a pretty typical domestic violence incident where, a person gets drunk, comes home, and engages in a domestic violence incident with the spouse. Well, time and time again, some of the cases that we get, there's an animal involved somehow, where the person will take out his aggression not only on the spouse, but on the animal as well. This happens many, many times. So this case that we highlight is just one of them. But what's interesting about this case is that come filing time, with a lot of these domestic violence cases, unfortunately our victim, the spouse, are reluctant to come forward, to go to court and testify. However, because we got an animal cruelty component to it, that makes the case so much stronger, and we're able to get felony filing on that. Whereas, if it was just a straight domestic violence, it would be a misdemeanor crime, at best. So those work. In terms of mental illness, we have our fair share of mental illness cases. I mean, time and time again, you have people with mental illness that have pets that engage in very aggressive, violent acts toward their animals. And that's where I think it's great to have this task force, because we do branch out to our warehouse with the mental evaluation unit. So all we have to do is just go upstairs and give them the referral. Or when there's kids involved, and they're there always is a lot of these domestic violence cases. We also reach out to the Department of Children's Services for intervention and let them do what they do best. So, there's just so many cases that we could talk about. I don't know if that's what you had in mind.
I was wondering if you could actually give me an example of a couple specific cases that...
I don't know that that's totally... I think it's really well enumerated in the report, and I'm not sure that... is this report made available to the public? I mean, some of the things here that I read just in the time that I hear are fairly disturbing, Mr. Chair, so I think that if we need to sort of discuss them in any specificity, I would suggest that the report's made available to folks, but I think it's pretty evident that this unit is really critical and is doing a tremendous job. But having read what I've read, I don't know that I want to hear any more.
That's fair enough. We can spare the people here the specifics.
Very disturbing.
They are very upsetting,
Yes.
actually.
Mr. Fuentes, any questions?
None.
Comments? All right, so if there are no more questions, we'll move this item and note and file the report.
Mr. Chair, may I suggest amending this so that it's a yearly report?
That would be a great idea. So
Thank you.
Absolutely.
come back next February and give us an update.
Be happy to.
Hey, thanks a lot. Item number 5. Excuse me, item number 4.
Item number 4, Economic and Workforce Development Department report relative to request for exemption, third and final year, for one Chief Grants Administrator, Class Code 1579, pursuant to Charter Section 1001D4.
Welcome. If you could walk us
Tanya
through the item.
Bellick, Personnel Department, representing Economic and Workforce Development Department.
Yes, so why does this position need to be exempted from civil service? Can a civil service employee not be found to do this particular work?
This is a continuing position in Economic and Workforce Development carried over from Community Development Department. And a lot of the resources and grant money and interest from the community that the department seeks for funding for these programs come through outside agencies and outside businesses. So this position is not something that would ordinarily be filled through the civil service. It is an ongoing position, and it provides a generous amount of support to the Economic Development Assistant General Manager position, which we're also in the process of getting filled in the department. And so this position manages most of the economic development function for the department and solicits interest and support from various organizations for economic and workforce development.
So if it was civil service, what would the impact be? Why would it make it more difficult?
The knowledge and skills and ability for this position is something that would range a little further outside of civil service, simply because much of the money and the grant money, federal and state level, involving nonprofits and other agencies and organizations, and networking and generating support from those agencies to get funding, since this position and most of the department is grant funded. So that's those resources are something that would branch far outside of just city civil service positions.
Any other questions? If not, we'll pass this item without objection.
Thank you.
Item number 5.
Item 5, Personnel Department report relative to the Consolidated Reasonable Accommodation Report for the first quarter of fiscal year 2013-14.
Welcome.
Olivia Flores for Personnel Department. The report that we provided described the city's efforts with reasonable accommodation of employees with temporary and permanent work restrictions due to industrial or non-industrial injury or illness. It covers the first quarter of the current fiscal year and compares this quarter to the same quarter of the last fiscal year. We have Workers' Compensation Division reports employees with industrial injuries or illness, and they track the light-duty hours worked in money. Employees who can't do the job but do light duty, so they are at work. IOD saved, which would be the light-duty hours times the employee's salary, and the IOD spent, which would be employees at home during this time. The attachments are spreadsheets of dollars of how much was spent or how much is saved. And really what we're looking for is a trend of light duty hours are up, IOD is up, and IOD saved is up, and IOD spent is down. That's the trend that we're hoping for, which is what's represented in this report.
So, a little longer term, are there increases and decreases that we see as an ongoing trend? If so, what do they mean?
We're not really, they've been pretty consistent over the past year. Like, we've been expanding on reasonable accommodation, we've been working with more creative ways to accommodate employees, to keep them at work, and that helps save money for the city.
Okay. How long will it take to resolve the pending cases that are out there?
Each case, it's a case-by-case basis. It's too individual to really track how long it would take for the cases that are out there at this point, either through light duty or through being at home with comp. It depends on the individual.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, we will note and file this item without objection. And that is all the business of this committee, so we are adjourned.